I know.
I'm not sure you
Be
want to.
be kind. I bet nobody even saw that. They'll see it on the
No,
they'll see it on the
everybody,
recorded version. But
everybody saw it. Everybody saw it.
so we are live right now, and I do see that somebody is watching. Don't know who it is, but hello. Thank you for tuning in. We have decided that let's see, once a month, the first Tuesday of the month, we're going to do live sessions like this at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Because we want to be able to interact and engage, and we want to be able to do something that I'm liking the term stump the chump.
And guess who the Trump is?
Yeah, guess who the chump is? Because
And try to say
it
Deborah's
ain't
title
me.
for this. Say Deborah's title for this. Can you do it?
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, Deb had a title that,
Yeah, let's see. Let
let's
me look.
see,
Let me tell you what
can
it is.
you,
Now, can
no,
you get Chuck stuck?
can you get Chuck stuck? See, I can say that. I thought it was a tongue twister because
Even in Rhode Island, they say all those words in a sentence.
they do. They do. You're
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
you can do it. Pretty sure.
So here we are. We want to be able to try to stump chump. Stump the chump. That just sounds really weird. Oh, check this out. Jessica Hodel, welcome.
Hey,
She
Jess.
likes it. She supports the
Yeah,
title.
Stump the Chump. I think she is totally on board with that, having been part of our family for way too many years to not know who I am. Yeah, I think chump is probably the kindest word some folks would use. So Jessica, are you going to stump me tonight? What's your first question?
Let's see what Jessica has to say. The whole point of today is to be able to come at us with questions and your greatest ISD challenges. What those are. What things have you stuck, and let's see if Chuck can help unstick you, get you unstuck.
Well, see, we're back to what Deborah wants to call this, right?
I know it's
Deborah,
kind
if
of
you're watching, you got to jump in here and defend yourself because otherwise it'll be brutal. So come on in.
so so far, Chuck. What are you thinking about our channel? Are you enjoying it? Are you enjoying these sessions that we're recording and putting up there, uploading for people to be able to hopefully share some insights and help teach and share insights that you have?
Well, I think I know it's a lot of fun working with you, and we have great fun doing these recordings and doing everything else. But the reality of YouTube is that it's a slow grow. It's a slow burn. You got to start out. You got to do a lot of work. You're not going to get any visibility unless you already have visibility. So if any of you think about starting a YouTube presence and doing all this, just be patient and get good production values because that's what Denise does for us. She's a tremendous producer. So the product will always look good, even if you have to work with the chump. And, you know, I think the one thing that I've learned going back into the media, being out of video for a while, is you just have to relax and be yourself. That trying to read scripts and the other things that we've tried to do, which was hilarious, in its lack of efficiency and professionalism. Um, yeah, just be yourself on YouTube. Just come on here and have fun and be respectful to people and answer questions in our case and present information. And people agree, won't just not everything we do they're not going to agree with. That's fine too. That's part of this discussion is having different points of view. But I think in terms of what we're trying to do and our mission for this channel, and I think that that's the really important thing to think about here. What is the mission of what we're trying to accomplish? And I think from our perspective, it is to grow the field of ISD and to let people discuss these things and to see how much wider a field it is than what most people think it is. People are doing extraordinary and incredible things in this field, and it's never called instructional design. And I think that's cool. And if we get up to 6 or 7 subscribers, I'm going to be thrilled.
You are right in that it is a real slow grow, but it's for me as a student of instructional design. It's been a lot of fun so far. Fun in a sense that I'm learning so much. My mind has been blown sometimes. It's been expanded by first of all, by some of the conversations you and I have about instructional design, and also when we bring guests on, because it's just fun to be a witness to the banter and the information that's exchanged between you and the guest, because that's where the magic really happens, I think, is listening to those conversations and listening to what people out in the field are doing on a daily basis and how they're impacting the world through ISD. So that's, to me, been one of the most enjoyable things. And the other enjoyable thing really is when I get to do this with my clicker, because I just really enjoy doing that. And I notice we have to do that a lot. Now on the end where everybody else sees the videos on YouTube, they don't get to experience that magic.
They don't get them. But they do get the Wheel of Pain. Do you have the Wheel of Pain close?
I sure do. And I
I
updated
think
all the questions because, well, not all
yeah.
of them, but most of them, because, you have seen them all, Chuck, and I wanted to be able to stump the chump. And
Oh,
that
you're gonna.
includes with
Oh, that's
the
part
Wheel
of
of
it.
Pain. So,
Oh, well, I think some of the people that ask questions tonight should feel the pain too. So, Jess, you're going to have to spin and
yes. Oh,
be a good sport.
speaking of Jess, we have a question here from her. She says she can try to ask a question and stump you. From
That
the
won't be hard.
from the perspective of institutions of higher education, she's curious about your thoughts on course templates in a learning management system. Are they useful, or are they a hindrance to academic freedom?
Well, I think you're going to find two different schools of thought, one from the faculty side, one from the production administrative side. And having migrated literally thousands of courses now from classroom to online, my experience has been the templates are the only way you can do this in scale. The question becomes, how much do you template? I mean, what degree do you do this? And a lot of times faculty will push back and say, well, that's not how I say things, or that's not how I group things, or I don't think that these categories on the left of the screen are the ones that I would use. And at some point, you have to have some flexibility as a design function to be able to say, there's a way to marry these two thoughts together. And on the design side, what we need is to be able to do these things efficiently and get them out the door and not spend 3 years moving a 3 credit course from classroom to online. So our needs are different than their needs. And the one thing that I found is when I actually had a conversation, and before COVID, it was sitting in an office or having coffee together, and now it's zooming around. But the notion is when you have a discussion with someone who's migrating the course, or when you talk to a group that's in a department, say you're moving a whole department's courses, I found it extremely valuable to get the design team and the administrative side in with the faculty and the teachers. And let's talk about all the things that you're worried about in this process. And the things you'll hear might completely surprise you. Some of the things I've heard in these conferences that, wow, I didn't even know that was a problem. Let's fix that before it becomes more of a problem for you. But then I also get a chance to explain to them why we have to have these templates, why we have to have something that approaches not only, they don't all have to look alike, but they need to all be able to be transverse alike. So when you look at navigation, that's the one thing a design function has to think about all the time. If I have a student that's taking 10 of these courses, I want them to get into all 10 courses, and I want them to be able to navigate essentially the same way. So if I'm going to call my discussion areas discussion boards, then why can't we always call them discussion boards? And why can't they always be in this particular order? And when I put materials up, why can't we call it the same thing in each of these? So when I go as a learner from course A to B to C to D, then I know that the things I'm going to look for that I have to read are in this section. And where I put my thoughts are in this section. And if I have to post some evaluation of mastery, this is where it's going to be and this is what it's called. And I think when you explain that to faculty and to teachers and trainers, they get a different appreciation for what you're trying to do. Because I think in some cases they think you're just trying to take over and it's this design idiot that's going to tell me how to teach my course. And no, we have no interest in telling you how to teach a course. All we need to do is take the greatness that you have in a classroom and make it greatness online. And here's the formula for that. So I don't know if that answers that, Jess, or not, but that's my perspective is you have to have it, but I think you have to have a conversation with them too.
Well, Jessica says she agrees, and she wonders how far is too far. Lots of faculty concerns about templates at her institution. So there's a lot of faculty who are worried about that at her place.
Yeah, sure. And I understand that. And if you haven't had the opportunity to just have the conversation about why you need them and why they're important and why learners need to be able to navigate the same way in each course, at least within a certain realm of reasonableness. Uh, I think what they don't like from my conversations with now hundreds of faculty is they don't like the creativity taken away from them. They think that you are going to cannibalize what they do and what they add to this whole notion of what teaching is. So as an instructor, this is the way I do it. I like to say this or that. Or I like to stand in this part of the room, or I like to sit behind the desk, or I bring cupcakes or cookies. Or every instructor is different about what they see as their role in the classroom. And I always like to have a conversation. I always ask them, "What's unique about what you do in the classroom? Tell me what makes you happy standing in front of this group of people. What are the things that you feel like you accomplish the best when you're teaching? Tell me about your teaching moment. When do you know you've gotten through to a student or a group of students?" And when I take the conversation away from the electronics of it, the okay, now we're putting you in a box and anybody in the world could dial up and do this. If you personalize it from their perspective, allow them the points of personalization, let them express themselves in a way that's reasonable within the template, which I think needs to be pretty ironclad. Personally, I think template's a template's a template. So let's talk about ways to make it personal for you as an instructor. And I think once again it gets back to conversation. Let's talk this through. And even with that, you're going to have a percentage of folks that are never going to like it. It's not what they grew up with. It's not how they've done it for the last X years. And I think we have to respect that as designers and say, okay, fair enough, but here's where we are. We're going to do this. Let's find a way to do this that makes you happy, but also fits our needs to be able to put out a quality product. And let's discuss it.
Yeah, I think there's something really valuable to that consistency factor in certain that a template can offer. Now, taking it out of the sphere of ISD, because just looking at something, an analogy, building cars, for instance. So you have, the gas pedal is always going to be where the gas pedal is. The brake is always going to be where the brake is going to be. And that's important because a driver can get into any car and know that the gas is on the right, the brake is to the left of it. And so there's that template in place. It's not messing with anyone's creativity in terms of design of a car or any of that kind. The color can be whatever. You can be hot pink if you want it to be, but there's a functionality to template design, I think, that can actually can definitely benefit the end user, in that there's always that that consistency factor is there. You know what to expect. There are certain elements that cater to that say, you don't want to mess. You don't want to be like, I'm going to be creative and put the gas pedal on the left-hand side and have fun,
or
drivers.
Put the steering wheel on the right side like they do over in different places. They're so
exactly.
backwards in those countries. But
exactly.
the whole thing is, and this is where it gets down to the science of instructional design. And every time I bring up science, some people roll their eyes like, it's not a science, Chuck. Well, yes, actually, it is a science. And one of the things we look at with learning management systems is how long it takes to immerse a student to the point that they can feel free about participating in a course. So it's immersion time. There's a ratio there if you want to figure it out. And as you get into the first course, it takes time for people to get accustomed to it, to learn to navigate, to feel comfortable with online, with that LMS, whatever you're using. All the branding and stuff that the institution will put in there. But once you get to the second course, now you're from entry to immersion point goes down considerably. When you get to course 10, it's almost non-existent. And those ratios are important too, because if in the first course they're spending hours getting comfortable, well, that's a reasonable thing, and you just have to be okay with that. So you can do things before they take part in the course, have primers on how to do this. This is how you work this LMS. This is the common features of your LMS. This is where you go to get help. Like in my courses, I have a panic button. I don't know if you saw it in 602, but I got a panic button.
Absolutely.
And it's there in case you panic. What a concept, right?
I appreciated that as a new student.
But students panic. And sometimes just having a panic button doesn't mean you ever use it. You just, okay, well, if it all goes south here, I just click on this and get a hold of the guy, and off we go. But there are there's behind the curtain stuff that goes on in design with LMSs. And one of those things is how long it takes to get a student from when they check in the first time to when they participate in the course actively. So those ratios are important. And if you can explain this to an instructor and say, navigation is important. Having a legitimate framework and boilerplating for this navigation function is critical for us to get them into your course and taking part each time, as opposed to them having to learn something all new and getting frustrated. Here we go again. And you find these numbers on down through the program. So, what's your completion rate? And you're going to find that well-navigated systems online have a higher completion rate because students can focus on the content. They don't have to focus on the process. These are things that I can argue endlessly and show you the science of it, but then you have to find a way to talk to faculty and others to convince them that that's true.
Yeah, and Jessica says that all of it's true, that our instructional designers have good luck selling templates as an initiative in student usability, but any other selling points are welcome. I did hear the argument for scalability.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, if COVID didn't teach you about scaling as an instructional designer in an institution, then there's no lesson that I could ever give you that would make that real. And one thing I always like to tell faculty is let us do this nasty little stuff of programming this up, making it look good and doing the behind the curtain stuff. I want you to concentrate on making this creative. I want you to concentrate on what you do best, which is getting people to mastery in this content area. So the thing that instructors like is the notion that they can make it unique. There are ways, here's the unique factors, push these buttons. As designers, will help you get to those. And I'm sorry, but this is a pay-to-play world out there. Folks are paying tuition at higher ed institutions. And if they're frustrated, they don't feel like they're getting their money's worth because each course is different and some are designed really poorly. I mean, you can get into online courses in some institutions and all you have is an announcement with 10 things they need to do that term. And that's it. That's all you get is an outline. And you get into other well-designed courses and the entire screen is navigation. Here's how we help you learn. Let's take the technology out of the picture. I want you to not even think about the technology. I want you to think about the content and your instructor and how we get you to the end of this course successfully. So all these things are very positive things for faculty. It's just a transition. And scalability, my gosh, if you don't do templates and different ways to, if you want to say mass produce, I don't like to call it that because we'll get into the Henry Ford argument about assembly lines. But the whole notion of it is that there are ways to be productive and concentrate on the things that are important. Let us as designers do the dirty work behind the screen. You take care of the creativity out front and we'll make it look like a star every time.
Yeah, that's really great. That's a really great way to explain it. Now, we had someone send us a question and it goes, as instructional designers, how can we best integrate formal and informal learning?
Formal and informal learning. Okay, so Jay passed a couple years ago. Jay was the guy that talked about informal learning in a way that a lot of people hadn't thought about it before. And you're going to see this in 605, Denise. And my argument is that 99% of learning is informal. And the way you capture informal learning and use it to your best advantage in formal learning is by analysis, finding out what people really know and what they really think. And many times, sometimes what you learn informally will shape exactly what you do with the course in a design. And one of the things I used to love to do when I was doing analysis on really large projects, months long, sometimes I did a 2-year analysis for a federal grant once. So can you imagine 2 years just doing the analysis to prove the feasibility of a course? 2 years. Ooh. That I'll never get back.
It was not a waste, though, was it?
Because no, of course
the
not.
End course, the end result was amazing.
Just like
I'm sure.
I went fuzzy right there on the screen. That's how I was for 2 years. Federal grants, God love you. But okay, so one of the things that I would do is I would go sit in break rooms. I would go sit where people are informally. I would go to where they go after work and sit and talk to them. And I never can find my analysis work do what most people would think about it, just pushing numbers and doing things. I never did that.
No, so you sat there, you had a cup of coffee with people, you found out their pain points. No?
before I quit drinking.
Water.
It was, you're right. Okay, we had water. Yeah, we had fizzies. We popped them in and talked about different colors. No, the notion is that if you're going to be a good analyst, you have to incorporate the informal world. And the thing you find about informal learning, especially in work groups, is they're informal leaders. They're not necessarily in line with the formal leadership. So there's always the person that says, don't do it the way they taught you, do it the way I do it because it's faster and quicker. And you don't need to do all that stuff they tell you to because that's just a waste of time. And if you don't have that information as someone doing analysis for a course or project, then you've completely missed the point. Because you have to address that kind of stuff. If someone says this is an easier way to do it, and you can do it in half the time or a tenth of the time, why don't you look at that?
Yeah.
Maybe there's some truth to that. And so I would argue that any instructional designer needs to first engage in the informal world before you put things down like that.
How would you like? So, how would somebody best tap into that? So,
You become them. I mean, I
yeah,
can't tell you how many times. Not that I was ever a content expert, because clearly no designer can be a content expert in most of the things they design for when you get to a certain level of expertise. So if you're working in an institution of higher learning and I'm moving PhD classes from classroom to an LMS, sorry, Chuck doesn't know that. I don't know anything about that content. But I want to sit around and listen to the students and what they're saying about that content. And I want to sit informally with instructors and hear what they think about this content. But you'll find instructors will say, well, I can't teach that because I don't have time, or, I expect them to already know this. And that's where you get into prerequisites, right? What's the
yeah,
instructor expect
absolutely.
somebody to come to the classroom with? And it's different at each level. So let's take us down to a program in a manufacturing scenario. Let's say you're doing training for an assembly line. Let's go back to Ford's original concept, 1919, whatever it was. And if you think about that, all you have to do is stand there. And I used to do this when I was looking at different programs. I'm not going to say the companies because that wouldn't be fair. But I would go to the assembly lines and I would stand in the background. And I never wore a suit for these meetings. I mean, I have to wear a suit when you go do what you do. But the other times I would put on scuffy clothes and old shoes and wouldn't necessarily look like I was anything more than what I was anyway.
Going undercover.
But now that's where going to police academy helped me. I learned how to blend in with the background, but that really helps. So I would wander around, I have a hard hat on, glasses, and I would just, wow, how'd you do that? I mean, is there any way that you could do that different? Is this the way you would do it? And ask questions like that. And you always get the managers. You have to get them to promise to stay the heck out of it. Do not be part of, don't come over to me. Don't acknowledge me. Don't act like I exist.
Yeah,
And don't act like you're going to get mad if somebody talks to me. Just let people talk to me.
yeah,
And every time I learned something, it was key to what I was trying to do, to what I was trying to accomplish. So I think get back to the original question. I have a way of turning a 30-second answer into a 3-week dissertation. But the notion of informal to formal, it's incredibly important. The link exists. It's real. You just have to find out what it is. And if you can find the informal leadership and how they feel on something, find the informal processes that people are doing but are not considered what someone might want you to do, then you're going to find out what's really going on. Then you can find that compromise and find a way to do things.
yeah. So you really are putting on a detective hat because,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to communicate with people. And if you're shy, you have to get over that because you have to be able to actually talk with people and really and get them to open up to you.
Well, you have to be authentic with people. And there's the
Yeah.
thing. If
Hmm.
you go into workplaces where everybody is dirty because that's the work, and you show up in a nice suit and shiny shoes, stay home. You're going to learn more having
Yeah.
breakfast somewhere. Go in there and be authentic. Be part of who they are and respect what they do. And this is the other thing that I tell designers all the time. If you don't respect your learning populations and the things that you're doing, find another job. Because ultimately, what you do as instructional designers, you show the ultimate respect for your learners because you want them to be successful. You want them to be able to do the things that someone thinks is important for them to be able to do at a level of mastery that's acceptable. And you can't do that without this total and complete respect for what people do. And it matters not what level of expertise or education or anything else. You have to have the ultimate respect for this learning population.
Jessica says, switching gears to the E in ADDIE model, I'm finding many instructional design teams and or SMEs put a disproportionate amount of effort on design and very little on evaluation. Is there any advice on, let me put that one up. Is there any advice on best practices for implementing a successful evaluation process?
Well, thankfully, in higher education, the regional accrediting bodies have all now made it very clear that they want courses to have measurable and observable evaluation. They don't want any more courses where people come in and participate, and at the end of the term, you pass or fail, even though you get a letter grade. In fact, they even took pass-fail out of most options for learning in higher institutions, highest institution of higher learning. So, with regional accrediting bodies like Middle States here on the East Coast, they're the ones that I worked with most, and being on Middle States committees to get accreditation and doing different things. Almost every institution in the last 20 years has gotten a note in their review that says you need to do real evaluation. If you can't show that somebody participated in the course and was able to reach mastery as you defined it, then tell me why they should be taking that course. Tell me why they should be paying for that course. So many times in institutions of higher learning, the argument is made that this isn't an option. This is an expectation now for regional accreditation. And you get even farther into that if you look at specific accreditations, American Meteorological Association or any professional body that's going to accredit a graduate or a student, they're going to have very highly defined methods of evaluating whether someone meets their standards or not for certification. So I remember specifically a program that we put together for people that were counselors, addiction counselors. And this was a nationwide program. It was a federal grant. People from all over the country were involved in this. And there was a test to get this accreditation, which included 3 years in practice, clinical practices, all kinds of other things. But they had to pass this test. It was not an option. They had to get a certain level of proficiency, and it was high. It wasn't like 70 or better. It was, I want to say it was 85 or 90 or better, which is tough enough. So we designed a program that not only got them to think about their clinical history and how that related to this certification process, but we actually went through every question in this certification to make sure that they at least had heard the question. Not always that specific question, but the same question, only different. People spend their entire careers wording questions for these things. But the notion of they talked about the concept, they thought about the concept. This is something you have to think about. And when you get into this certification exam, you're going to have to think about how you relate to this content and what you might want to answer. So not only does higher education have, and this was accredited, by the way, we accredited it, I think for 3 credits taking that course. And this is higher education now. People want results. People want tangible results. People want marketable results. People want to be able to use this to get a job or do whatever they're going to do. And I think you're going to find as you do post-course evaluations, whether you do level 3s or, I could even make an argument for a level 4 return on investment for these things. How much you invest and how much you get out if you go to school. How does that increase your employability and everything else that goes on? So I think you can make the argument in academic institutions that this is not an option, that you have to evaluate. And you have to do it at a reasonable level too. So show me something that I can observe and I can measure and make sure that I can tell when someone's reached mastery. And the other part of that is, what's my plan if they don't reach mastery? What's my plan for remediation? Say I've got 5% or 10% with a certain content area that I'm having trouble getting through. What's my plan for them? A good instructional designer has plan B for remediation if people can't meet the standard for what they expect in evaluation.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Now, in terms of another question we had, how can we overcome the challenges for delivering virtual training to an international audience?
Well, international audiences bring up so many different variables. So you have the obvious time and location. You have the notion of language, being able to translate if that's an issue. There's so many things with migrating internationally. Like I spoke to a student of mine today who's in Dubai, 8-hour time difference. And
Yeah.
okay, if I'm going to do online, I've got to think about that. So I do synchronous or asynchronous. And most of the time you do asynchronous because that allows them to participate when they can't. But if you're going to do something synchronous, you have to balance what they think is reasonable and what you think is reasonable. So in one course I'm teaching this term, I just got on and this is the first day of the course that they're doing bios, and I have a student in Korea. Um, that's exactly 12 hours difference. So there is no way I can do synchronous activities reasonably. Um, so the design becomes a lot of things. It becomes first how you decide to do it. And most of the time, synchronous is probably going to be the way to do it, but there are alternatives that you can do it other ways. But then you have to think about the language issue. Do you have to worry about English in 2 languages or going to 4 languages? I mean, some of the courses, I did a course for New York City for hotel employees. 27 languages were spoken in that property. 27.
Wow.
Okay, we're going to pick our favorite 15. Are we going to
How
teach
did
it
you
all
how did
27?
you how did you decide? Like what was the
We found where the resonance points were. So the resonance points were English, Spanish, French, and I believe Arabic, but I'll have to think back. It was a while ago. But so these are always problems, whether you're online or not. But the notion of, okay, now we're going to migrate these problems to technology and distance learning and distributed learning. So this is where I think the worst case scenario analysis really plays well. Get a group of really smart people together that have done this before and say, what are all the things that can go wrong here? What do we hear from students? What do we hear from instructors? What do designers find out? And I think when you do a worst case scenario, you can call it analysis or evaluation, whichever way you want to go with it. The notion is things are going to start to pop up. And they're going to be the same issues you have in any other course. They're just going to be spun a different way. So you want to make sure if you do not offer just in English or whatever your L1 is, that you have to have a plan for that and make sure that you've got someone who really knows that second language that can make sure all your materials are in fact honestly portrayed. And I can remember things that we translate just to Spanish, which you would think would be pretty easy. No, there are certain words in Spanish dialectically that you think are perfectly innocent and they have a very naughty meaning in different dialects, right? So we were saying one word which is particularly offensive, which we had no concept of because our interpreter was dialectal in a different form. So, it's always pilot test children. But it's that kind of stuff. And you can do it. I mean, you just have to figure out how big's your field, how wide you're going to make the variables, and you can come up with things that resonate very well with this. And now the expectation is abroad that, okay, if I'm taking a course, within the United States, here's the time frame. I might be 8 hours off, I might be 12 hours off, might be 16 hours off. Try teaching in Australia from here. Was it 16 hours? So there's all this stuff, and that's where you usually fall back and play safe and do asynchronous, but sometimes you got to do synchronous. So in some cases, I've had to do 2 things for every course in 2 different time spheres. So one on the time that we would normally have here, and one that, an Asian time or an African time, or a lot of things I did in Egypt. Egypt is 7 hours off. Try doing that synchronous. I mean, and in Arabic.
Yeah.
Or Israel. Okay, Israel 7 hours. Dubai 8 hours. And do it in different language. So do it in Hebrew or. Okay, welcome to the world of international learning.
Become an expert in time zones, which always mess me up when I do interviews with international students or industry practitioners, industry experts. I always get confused with the time zone. I have to go and Google that and make sure I'm on the right time zone because.
Well, that's because Rhode Island has its own time zone. It's Rhode Island time.
That's
which
right.
Could be anything from noon to 6. Who knows, right? It's beach time.
That's right. You got that.
You can say that about Ohio time too.
Okay.
Right, Jess? What is Ohio time? Buckeye time. Nobody knows what that is. And then Indiana's got 2 different time zones, so try going to Indiana because you don't know what year it is sometimes. So it's just all this stuff that you got to put in your formulas, and you can figure it out. You come up with something.
Yeah, and it's that worst case scenario planning
Got to do it.
that
Got to
really
do it.
does help in pilot testing, making sure that things are the way they should be and they're not misinterpreted. All great advice, all great points. Another question that came in was, in what ways can we use social tools to extend formal training?
So social media,
Yeah.
I love social media, and I've been using social media before it was social media. And what we have today is, you know, how many generations of social media? I have to go back and look, but it all goes back to this notion of anytime, any place, instantly, and 140 characters, 144 characters at one point. Just like I went in and out of focus, so will social media at times. But I think it's tremendous, and I use it all the time. I use it in the classroom when I'm teaching. I will have a Twitter feed scrolling across the bottom of the screen for comments and questions within a class, and I'll come up with a specific hashtag that I hope nobody else is using at the moment. And I've told you some of the horror stories from when I've done this in the past and things people come up with and post on there, because Google is not your friend at all points. But social media to me is a tool. It's an adjunct to what you do. I argue I could teach an entire course on Twitter, and I think I could do that. And all you have to do is think about how you think about learning. And in the new book and in different things that we've talked about on here, Denise, I get into this notion of putting together training or information or education in packets. Think of everything as being a chunk of learning, not as an entire body of learning. So an hour might have 60 chunks of learning in it. And if you think about that, you can break that down and easily use it within the confines of social media. You can also use social media as an adjunct to a course. So use it for information driving, use it like I do for questions and comments, do lots of different things. Many of the courses that I have away from UMBC are associated with Facebook pages and Instagram accounts and different things, because we do have a lot of people in different time zones. So for us to communicate in real time, that's the easiest way to do that. So I'll post things on Facebook that are related to the content and do whatever. But each of the social media, I still haven't found anything for TikTok. I'm still not sold.
You got to get the dogs involved.
I, I
Your
look at
dog,
TikTok and I lose complete
figure out a
faith in
way.
humanity.
You got to figure out a way to bring the dogs into
So
the
if
lessons.
somebody out
And
there can tell me how to use TikTok in education, I know there's a way. I've got a block. But all social media is useful, even TikTok. We can find a way to harness
I'm
that.
sure.
So make it part of what you are. And the thing that I found too about social media, which at first was hard for me to understand, now I completely understand it, is people that use social media personally, like it's how they communicate with their social group, with their friends or whatever, they have a hard time using it for education. And they feel like it's infringing on their personal time and their personal place. And this whole space issue and, giving my 3 foot of social distance, it all applies to social media too. So you have to think about your population, do your research, look and see, is this a group, even though they use social media, all of their waking hours, are they wanting to use it for education and training?
Right.
And how will they feel about that? And then you've got the training issue with people who've never used it. One of the courses I teach in apprenticeship for apprenticeship instructors is how to get on social media. And most of them have never been on social media.
Wow.
The younger ones have, and one of the most striking stories, and it still brings tears to my eyes, I had a guy that just was not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not getting on Twitter. It's commies and, whatever. That's not what he said. But, this whole notion of it, there's this whole underground here. It's going to come and find me if I get on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I made him do it. I said he can erase his account as soon as the class was over. Make sure nobody follows you.
He's probably got like 10,000 followers now.
He probably does. But the whole thing was he got on there and he just put out, "Hi, this is me. I'm doing this against my will." Okay, I'm fine with that. And 3 minutes later, up on his account, his daughter said, "Dad, when did you get on Twitter?" And he started crying.
Oh,
It's like, Chuck, my daughter, my daughter doesn't talk to me. And she
Oh,
wants to know how long I've been on Twitter. And tears rolling down his cheeks. And I'm thinking, maybe you'll listen to me next time.
I've been
I
on
didn't
for
say
30
that.
seconds.
And
Oh,
and
that's
I see
awesome.
this repeated over and over and over again. And sure, I mean, I'm not going to put anything personal on Twitter. It's not going to happen. I mean, my personal space is not my public space, especially with the things I have to do publicly to do this or that. But I think there's a time and a place for people to find a comfort level with some of the things they do. And I like to see that kind of growth where people are able to accept it for what it is and not make it more than it is or less than it is. And, it's a tool, it's an adjunct to what we do. And I think used wisely and in the right population with the right content, you can do some amazing things with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many different platforms. And I mean, as an author, I interact with a lot of people, and there are some people who I can reach on Facebook, and some people who are like, I'm never on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. And so there are different platforms for different needs and different audiences. So it's important to do that population analysis and understand your population and understand what their needs are. And yeah, and there are just certain, I would imagine there are different platforms that would make learning a certain topic easier than another platform would. So it's an interesting
Well,
place
and I
to
thought, as an
conduct learning.
instructional designer, I think that if there's anything out there that you can use and you don't use it, shame on you. Whether that's social media, whether that's building blocks. I mean, it depends on your population, it depends on your content, depends on how you have to implement it, what environments you have.
Yeah,
If you don't use everything that's available to you, why are you being a designer? If you're in that box, that's not
yeah.
healthy for you. There's so much good stuff out there. Take a field trip. I mean, some of the assignments that I used to do in some of my courses would go sit in the mall and observe people for an hour.
I love that. I really do. I think that's the best way to learn about human nature and
Just go watch it.
understand what people
And
what the pain points are. And
And I had designers go into businesses, different
yeah,
businesses like fast food places and hotels and, anything is a business. I had to ask them if you can come in and just observe that you're not going to comment on anything or design a course unless that's what they want. You can do that later. But right now we're just talking about analysis. Just go in and watch. Shut your mouth for an hour and pay attention to what's going on.
yeah,
And everybody comes back a different person about analysis and about the tools that they could use. And we even put together a program as a result of this for baristas at a very large chain, which I won't mention. But we had a group of students go in and just observe, and they found so many things just standing there watching the inefficiencies and the communications tools.
whoops,
And
sorry.
wow, wait a minute, let
I
me
don't
adjust my
know what I
head.
just did.
What are you trying to tell me, Denise?
I was playing around. What can I say? I was.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's our producer, Denise Cardano.
We needed a little comic relief. I don't know.
Yeah, so that was fun. But anyway, so if you think about all these things, social media is just one design tool. Get out there and watch what
Yeah.
people do with it. So sit in the park and watch. Or, I mean, Jess knows. Sometimes we sit around as a family, we text each other, just to irritate each other. And there's so many things you can do in a very productive way, and just find out, okay, what are these soft points here? What are people able to participate in? And there are times when people, just like on the internet, people feel much more comfortable sharing something in social media. And I used to say that I never thought that online could be as personal with my relationship with students as a classroom. And what I found out is I knew more about my students online at the end of a term than I knew about most of my students in the classroom. And that's because there's a different level of communication, a
Right.
different level of intimacy that people are willing to share and feel safe about. And a lot of times people will write paragraphs and won't say a word in class because
Yeah.
that's not the way that they communicate.
Hmm.
So I think social media is just one of many terrific things that we can use.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we had one more question, and we're getting to the 45-minute mark here. So kind of be a great way to wrap it up. The question is about difficulty and objectives. So, why should designers care about the degree of difficulty in objectives?
Okay, so degree of difficulty and objectives. This is a very good question. It gets us into the science of instructional design. Degree of difficulty is incredibly important. This goes to performance agreement too. It's making sure your objective behaviors and conditions and evaluation tasks all match up. And the reason you do this is because you want to make sure that what you're doing is matching not only the level that the content needs to be, but also the level of the expectation of what this learner will be able to do when they leave. So let's take the real simple example of riding a bike. So a degree of difficulty in a course in riding a bike could be to observe someone riding a bike as a learner and then write a paragraph on what it's like to ride a bike. So, okay, Chuck, you've seen me ride the bike. Tell me what riding a bike is all about. Tell me how you ride a bike. And I say, okay, well, you stand up, you sit down, you take the handlebars, you pedal, you try not to fall. That's how you ride a bike. Okay, so now degree of difficulty, if it didn't matter, that's an A, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
that would
no
be,
problem.
yeah.
Yeah, passed the course. Congratulations. Denise, you are now an expert bike rider.
Now let's get out there and see you actually do it.
Okay, so now let's take degree of difficulty up a little farther, and let's say, okay, I would like for you to demonstrate the ability to be able to get on the bike and just balance yourself on the bike in a stationary position. So that's an intermediate level of proficiency or degree of difficulty. Now, what I would suggest most people would think would be reasonable is now be able to take it 50 feet without falling off, without losing your balance. So you have three different levels of difficulty. One is describing, and this goes back to Bloom. Look at Bloom's verbs, and you'll see this very clearly. Describe, demonstrate, and go farther. And then there's even a higher degree of difficulty, and I think we talked about this in one of our shows, that there's a super expert. So someone that does nothing the way they're supposed to, and yet they're more efficient at something. And this was proven with jet pilots, that you would teach them to do something perfect, whatever that was, landing on a carrier, taking off from a carrier, or any of the other things that they might do. And there would be that one pilot that would do something different that worked better.
Hmm.
And that was the super efficiency or the super mode of learner hierarchy. So the more you get into this, the more you realize that this is really a critical factor in what you do as a designer. You have to be able to produce an evaluation of mastery and presenting content and delivering this to a learner at the level at which, and I would argue that they're going to use it in the real world. That's always my guideline. What is the practical application of this content? Is someone just going to have to describe how to ride a bike, or are they actually going to have to ride a bike? And then take that infinitesimally, exponentially farther in terms of difficulty and level of sophistication and content. But it's all exactly the same. It's you determining what the output necessity is.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And that cleared up a little bit in my mind about what it means to be, because I was a little confused about the whole idea of degree of difficulty and objectives. And so I can see the importance of adding that in there and knowing. Something you brought up, though, I'm a little confused about still is, so this jet pilot who did it, the
Mm-hmm.
super, what did you call it?
Super proficiency, super expert,
Super expert.
different terms.
From that, though, is that where a designer would then, would a designer take that and use it to redesign
Absolutely.
instruction? Okay.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And, there's 5 levels of efficiency. I mean, this is where it came from. You can know about something, you can demonstrate something, you can be an expert at something, or you can be a super expert. Super experts are 1% or less, but they exist. And you have to be open to this. Just like with a design, you're never more 90% done with it. Well, never think that the only way something is going to work is the way you teach it or the way you've designed it, because that's not true. Things change. And even if they don't change, there are people that are smarter than you about these things. And even your best subject matter experts will tell you that eventually someone will find a better way to do something. And you have to be okay with that. And that gets you this whole point of degree of difficulty. what is the output that you expect from a learner? If it's not that high, if it's just, a survey course or just background information, okay, they can describe things. But an example that I love to use is in health services, CPR. Do you want somebody to be able to describe how to do CPR? Or would you like them to be able to demonstrate that 3 times in a row without error? Now, personally, when that EMT shows up and the paramedic jumps out, I'm going for 100% proficiency here. You know, I, I
No
may
room
not
for
be
error.
awake. There's no room for error here. But if this is just a background course for some other program, and what's the purpose of being able to boost CPR? Okay, well, fine. Does this or does that. And just take that with every content piece that you have and figure out what's realistic here and how well do these people need to be able to do this? What do I learn? What do our learners need to be able to demonstrate mastery and at what level? And
Hmm.
then you get your degree of difficulty. And people don't like to talk about it sometimes because it's a heck of a lot of work. But if you don't have this as part of your design strategy, if your team doesn't have this as one of the check marks when they're going through this, you're going to miss a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for explaining that. So that brings us to the end of our questions. And I don't know if you want to do one little quick spin of the wheel of pain to kind
Was
of.
Jess still here? Can Jess answer one of the half questions? Jess, are you still here? Jess is now hanging up. and I will get a text shortly.
That's funny. The last time I
No,
tried to
okay, you
check.
can do it to me first. Do it to
Okay,
me
all right, all
first.
right.
If anybody else wants to play out there, we'll set you up. And you put new questions on here?
Some.
Oh, great.
So let's see
This
which one
won't
we
work well.
land on. Oh boy. Let me see if I can read it. Oh, this is an easy one. What is your favorite season and why? What
Fall.
makes it your favorite season? Fall.
Fall. Absolutely love fall. It's
What
transition.
is it?
It's
Okay, transition. I was gonna say, what is it about fall?
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. There's no second place for me. It's always fall.
It's the
September,
smells and
October.
yeah, the smells, the
Yeah,
colors. It's the only thing
it's just change.
yeah, the change. They change. The only thing I don't like about fall is when it gets to the end of it and I know winter's coming. I'm like, oh, and it's going to get darker earlier. It's going to mess
Yeah,
up
but
my. I
that's why I
know.
wouldn't want to live where there aren't seasons.
Yeah.
And I've worked in places where there are no seasons, and I know there's people that like it. It's personal choice, but for me, I like the change. I'm the kind of person that can't sit still, so change is what I always strive for. Is I want every day to be different, and I want a new challenge every day,
Yeah.
and all of that. So the seasons, I
The
wish there were eight
seasons do
seasons,
that. You wish there were eight.
but there's only four because people are so normal. But fall.
Now, Jessica says that she's nervous.
Oh, good.
Jessica,
Well,
this
then
one's coming
here you
at
go.
you. So,
Spin the wheel. Come
okay,
on. You can do it.
spin the wheel. Oh, all right, Jessica. What is your favorite kitchen gadget? Chuck's
Oh, I can't
laughing.
wait to hear this one. You should see David in Jess's kitchen. It is like if Better Homes and Gardens wish they were this nice. It's just they completely redo every kitchen, every house that they move into, and it always
Oh, I love a good kitchen. I got to tell you,
oh
I'm in the kitchen a lot. I do a lot of cooking.
oh
And
you
one
would
of
love
my,
their kitchens.
oh, I like my dream is to have an indoor grill in my kitchen. Like I would love, I stayed at a house once, I house sat a long time ago, and they had a grill right in the center of their kitchen. And I thought that was the best thing in the world. But I don't have that as
Well,
my
I will
gadget.
send you a kitchen photo from Jess and David, and you will just drool because it's so incredible.
So Jessica says a pot filler. It seems so useless in theory, but it's a must. I don't even know what that is.
That's so Jess.
Mine,
That's adorable.
mine is that I have this little thing that I put. It's a clippy thing that I put on my pans, and then I could stick my spatula or my whatever utensil I'm using. I can stick it in there.
See, there was a Rhode Island word,
I know.
spatula. Don't ever change, Denise. God, I love your accent. Makes me want to throw my Ohio accent away. Get yours.
I'm glad I could entertain you with my spatula. That was very
There's
Rhode
another
Islandish.
word. Yeah, tell me. So,
So,
Jess, you want to do one more?
all right,
One
let's
more.
do one more, Jess.
Anybody else out there that wants to do
Yeah,
one?
if
Let's do one for Jess. Yeah, one
I'm
more.
gonna Google. All right, so hold on. So Jessica says to Google it. I'm gonna Google it. It's
You'll
like a
Google it.
faucet for the stove. Oh, yeah, that could be very useful.
Yeah, it's way beyond my pay grade.
All right, Jessica? What is your thought on unplugging from technology?
Hmm.
I'll tell you while we're waiting for Jessica to answer. I tried to do that desperately this weekend. I really, really did. I had 4 days
And
and I
you
said,
didn't. You were horrible at it.
please. I'm like, the second the phone bling, bling, I'm like, whoop, whoop. It's
You'll
terrible.
notice I did not.
I know, I noticed. It was
I
a little,
did
it was
not
a little
text you all
quiet.
weekend.
I
And then I
know.
saw you on Instagram.
I couldn't help myself. I'm
And
like,
I was, yeah. Oh, well, okay. So much for this weekend idea.
yeah, I have a hard time unplugging personally. I, I really do. But I think it's a good thing to do every once in a while. I really do. Just put technology away and just go out into nature and spend some
Yes.
time digging in this, digging in the garden. I did do a little
That's-
bit of that. Played with
It's a
the
great theory.
cicadas.
I can't do it for 10 seconds.
It's really hard. I mean, I have technology all over the place. I mean, it's like everywhere I look, it's terrible. So Jessica says that all right, it's an absolute must do, but it's so difficult. Okay, great. I'm glad that you agree with us. She's
phone
tried no
Sunday?
phone on Sunday. It only lasted about 2 weeks. It's really, yeah, I understand.
No
I
phone
just-
Sunday. I don't think so.
That's when everybody calls or texts, and then you feel like you're missing out on something in the world. That's the problem.
Yeah.
These
I don't
people-
make excuses anymore. I don't make apologies. I've been plugged into technology since I was a teenager. I mean, I've always liked gadgets and electronics. I'm a nerdy ham radio operator and all the things that go with that stuff. So I've always had something blinking. And then when I was in law enforcement, there was always the radio by the bed. So that was squawking all night.
Oh
And
my God.
when I wasn't working all night. So I've always had this. And even Karen Sparky will say, yeah, there's only 3 or 4 things blinking in the room tonight. So
Slow down.
you got the all hazards radio, and you got the this and then that, and she just puts the blankets over her head and goes to sleep. I've never been in that environment,
Yeah.
so I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I'm okay with
I
that.
think it would be difficult to do. But once in a while, I do like to just get out into the garden and sit out on my deck or something and just
But
not
you
have my
take the phone with you. Oh, you always take
Well,
your phone.
I usually do, but there are moments where I don't. I will tell you, full disclosure, in starting my new class this week, 6:05 with you, I took my Kindle. Yes, it's technology, but it was my Kindle, and I have the book on my Kindle, and I went out to there without my phone, and I read the chapter, and I felt so peaceful. I'm like, the cicadas were chirping. The airplanes were flying by, but that's okay. I live near 5 miles from the airport, and I just enjoyed the peace and quiet. And I didn't have my phone. It was
I'm
five.
gonna
It was
ask
about,
Hector
5
I'm gonna
feet
ask
inside the
Hector.
door, but it's
Hector will tell me the truth.
there's something that's very jarring though about not having that. It's like an
Does
extension.
Hector ever not have his phone?
He's more of a technology guru than I am.
He's always got his phone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's got his iWatch on him, his phone, his earbuds in his
Oh,
ears.
yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a tough thing. I mean, God, I can't remember life without it. It's really sad.
I don't want life without it. I mean, I'm not going to apologize for it. I like it.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good
So,
thing.
Jess, I'm proud of you. When you do another
Yeah.
no phone Sunday, let me know. Text me right when you get in the middle of it.
Text you.
Let me know you're not doing it. No, I'm not texting
Oh,
today.
my God. All right. Well, it's 7. Well,
Do we
Chuck,
need to let the world?
Chuck
world
always
go
told
back
me,
to
don't
where
use
it is?
time. Don't use time. In
It is
these
now
things."
time to leave.
But it's time to leave. It's been an hour, and I feel like that's probably a good time to break now and say goodbye. It's been a great It's been very insightful. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And as usual,
thanks to
I feel
everybody.
enlightened. Yeah. And thanks so much, Jessica, for asking these great questions because they
And
just say,
folks need to know
yeah,
Jessica's going to be on here on the channel in an interview coming up very shortly. So once we get that scheduled and get
yay.
her on here, you're going to learn some tremendous things about community college instructional design and that whole process. So stand
Absolutely.
by for that.
Yes. And meanwhile, Jessica says, I'll text you to tell you I'm not going to text you.
And I will text back because I always have my phone.
On that note, thanks
On
everyone for
that
tuning
note,
in. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and put some comments and ask some questions and try to stump Chump. Stump the Chump. It was his
shouldn't be
phrase.
too difficult.
It was his phrase, not mine. I'm kind of
Yeah, but
digging
you
it now,
bought
though.
into it. You
Yeah,
bought
I bought
into it.
into it. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.